Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you today. Thank you for connecting, and I look forward to a really juicy conversation here today. My name is Lena Moxon. I'm a somatic activated healer, and my work with you here today is to open up a dialogue with you, to have you in the curiosity and the contemplation of how well you actually really know yourself. Because here's what I know to be true. We think we know ourselves. We think we are in the inquiry of knowing ourselves, but we actually know very, very little about what it's like to actually be us. And so my work is to have us drop out of the head for a little while, right? We're all quite fixated on intellectualizing our own personal development or growth or healing. We're reading the books, we're listening to the podcasts, we're taking the workshops, which all serve us. And it's all needed and necessary and wonderful, but it's not all there is. And so today, the invitation that I'm extending is the opportunity for you to drop out of your head and turn inward and consider the experience of being you within your body, what your internal landscape is like, because we know very, very, very little about the mystery of the way we are actually experiencing ourselves and others and the world through the way that we are having these internal experiences. So I look forward to sharing some really potent and powerful prompts with you today. I invite you to just listen, to allow yourself to receive. And what I mean by that is to not try and make sense of everything straight away, to let what I have created today be like little seeds of awareness or curiosity that I'm just simply planting within you today. Let it be there. Let yourself take whatever makes sense, feels right, feels true, feels real for you today. And also notice what might land as abrasive, irritating, not right, because both of those things serve us in recognizing more about ourselves, the experience we're having of ourselves, and how that is impacting the way that we are showing up in the world. So I have put together some slides today to share with you. I've actually got my phone here. I can see that there's a few of you live, and so feel free to go ahead and comment. Got my phone here. I can hear myself playing back. Live, and so give me 1 second, guys. That was too loud. And so I'll check in throughout. I can't actually see the chat right here and right now, so I'll do my best to check in throughout. To make sure that I answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll make sure I do jump in and answer questions at the end. So feel free to share your reflections, your insights, your contributions, and to ask questions as we go. And please know if I'm not getting back to you as I'm presenting, I will jump in at the end. All right. So here we go. Wonderful. Okay. So I begin today by pointing out something that you might not be aware of. Maybe something that, unless you are genuinely interested in somatic experiencing in the way that I am, you might never have considered before. But the literature tells us and shows us in many ways that no culture in history has ignored the body as much as ours. As a culture, as a community, as a generation, we have lost touch with our bodies. And this isn't just historical, right? It still occurs as the foundation of most behavior management systems in place within schools. And I know this to be true because I was a primary school teacher for about 10 years. And a lot of the ways that we've been conditioned, educated, raised has encouraged us to abandon our own bodies and to focus on the way that we think, the way that we speak, the way that we present, but not on what is occurring within our body and what our body wants us to know and do. So as a teacher, one of the things that, was just kind of commonplace amongst the school that I worked in at the very least, but I know this is kind of across the board, was that the behavior management policy for the school included something called the 5 Ls. And this was what we used as a behavior management system within classrooms to, best support us in getting children to sit still. And basically the 5 Ls encourage students to sit with their legs crossed, close their lips, have their hands in their lap, to look and to listen. And I bet you can relate that, this was what happened when I was at school too. We were told, sit still, sit straight, shut up. And as children, it's a really difficult thing to do, right? Because we're wriggly and we're curious and we're learning and we have a lot to say and we have this need for connection. And we had all of that squeezed out of us. And we were encouraged instead to sit still, to not move. This has happened in classrooms, but it's also happened in many other areas of our lives, right? We're being too much, moving around, saying too much was not encouraged. And so slowly but surely, from the time that we were little, we've had our capacity to be tuned in to the urges, the compulsions, the cravings, the needs of the body to be dialed right down so that we could override them. Our bodies actually have innate, natural healing systems. There's so much wisdom within the body, so much that the body has to say and share with us, to us, through us, as us. But we've been encouraged to override our body, shutting our inner body signals down, suppressing our feelings. We know this because we have such a hard time with certain sensations, or we have such difficulty articulating how we feel. Not because there's some deficit within us, but simply because we have never been encouraged to be in tune with the sensations within the body, the experience of being within the body. We actually don't know our internal landscape very well. Now, historically, we have come a long way, and self-exploration and expression is at least becoming more mainstream. We are open to allowing ourselves to cry. Even men sometimes, more often than not, something that we encourage. We're allowing people to be more expressive in the way that they emote and relate to others, but there is still a very long way to go. My work is in resensitizing people, encouraging people not to be emotional for the sake of performing emotion, but to be emotional so that they can rekindle the alliance between body, mind, and soul, and understand that our emotions have been given to us as this beautiful gift from our nervous system to give us immediate current feedback for how we're tracking, what's going on within us, how that might be impacting and influencing the way that we're relating to ourselves or others or the world, and to support us in course correcting as we go, rather than just denying, repressing, suppressing, ignoring the way that we feel until it is so obvious that we explode. That's what I'm trying to support people in avoiding, in being so in tune with their emotions, their sensations, the feedback from their body, that they are able to make moment-to-moment decisions using discernment based on the feedback that their body is giving them. Not to get to the end of the day and look back and reflect and think, oh, yeah, I was feeling overwhelmed, I was anxious, I was stressed, and because of that, I was really difficult for the people around me to be around. Or I was maybe a little bit impatient, or I was quite aggressive with my language, right? We don't want to get to the end of the day every day, only then to look back and see how we've been. There is capacity and potential for us to do this as we go. And when we do this, not only do we support ourselves, but we ensure that we're not unconsciously causing harm to others in the world. My son is 4, and I see the way that he is so embodied in the expression of whatever emotion that he is experiencing. And as his mother, that's difficult to be around sometimes, to just allow, because there is still this conditioning within me to say that like certain behaviors are acceptable and certain behaviors mean that you're acting up, acting out. And when I stop and I consider whether him fully crying and throwing his body down on the ground as he's upset and processing his upset, is wrong, or if it is actually the most natural and normal expression of sadness. And could I just suspend my judgment and allow that to happen? And when I do, and I do, what I notice is, as he's allowed to fully express whatever emotion he is going through without me intervening and try to modify it or suppress it or, change it in any way, he actually moves through that emotion quite quickly and he's on to the next. We see this in children quite often. They have their meltdown moment and then they bounce back and they're just playing with something a few minutes later and we think, well, that was a quick recovery. The potential and the capacity for us to process emotion in the same way, to say, I see you, I face you, I recognize you, and now I permit you to pass through me and over me, is something that is innately built within us, something that we can reconnect to, something that we can decide we are willing to activate within ourselves again. Now, of course, there are a lot of adaptive responses and coping mechanisms that we have put in place that actually block us from our current capacity and ability to do that. But the aspiration is that we gently let go of those things that have hardened us, that have guarded our heart, that have made it seem almost impossible for us to be with emotion and process emotion in a way that feels safe in real time, to let go of all the thought patterns and the behaviors and the, like I said, adaptive responses that are in the way of us being able to do that, and to make a little bit of spaciousness for us to begin to respond to emotions just a little differently. And when I look at my son and I see the way that he's able to process emotion so quickly and without his own judgment and without fear of judgment, I realize that there are still aspects and parts of me that are rigid, that are numb, that are stiff. And he remains my inspiration for the capacity that I have to let my body do its thing in processing emotion. And that doesn't look like removing myself from situations, shutting down entirely, distracting myself on the phone, binge eating, drinking a wine, gossiping, all of the other harmful coping mechanisms that I have accumulated over the course of my life to distract me or disassociate me from emotions that I had been taught were not safe to feel, were not appropriate. So why does this matter? Why does this matter? If what I'm saying is true, that for most of us, we've developed these great adaptive responses, these coping mechanisms that serve us, that distract us, that allow us to hold those emotions down so that they're not seen, not felt, not noticed, not spoken of, why can't we just leave it like that? Why can't we just focus on feeling better and ignore the parts of us that feel worried, anxious, stressed, sad, lonely? Why? Well, my genuine belief and the reason that I show up in this work is because I believe that we need a world where we are balanced, responding skillfully, communicating, and living with a devotion to ensure that as each individual, as much as we are aware of the individualistic nature of our own healing, of our own journey, of our own path, that we are also aware and tuned in to the interconnectedness of all beings. And so that we are doing this work within ourselves and we are learning to relate to ourselves and our emotions, our thoughts and our behaviors in this way, so that when we do show up in the world aware of our interconnectedness, we are doing the very best that we can to ensure that we are doing no harm to others or to ourselves and to the world. This matters. This is important. I think it was His Holiness the Dalai Lama that said, and I always paraphrase, so mind that, but if you want world peace, you must first focus on inner peace. And so it's our own selves that we have to explore, defrost, resensitize, and liberate. And I offer this invitation today because what I know to be true and what I cannot wait for you to remember is that your body is a wild, wise creature that truly wants to be your friend. There is so much there. All right. So the first prompt, the first question that I'm going to give to you today comes in the form of a question. What makes a thought sticky? Sticky, 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 sticky. So for some of us, what we experience is that we have certain thoughts that we ruminate in or with, certain thoughts that we begin looping. Sometimes we describe the experience of that, of our inner critic having something to say, or a part of us that feels really fearful and anxious. We'll start thinking about something and that thought gets really, really sticky. And we think it so often, and we allow it to dictate choices that we make so often, that it becomes a belief. We forget that this is just a thought that has appeared, and we actually internalize it as a truth because we have thought it so often, and we have let our actions be informed by this thinking that we now have internalized it as truth. And so a lot of the work that we do in allowing ourselves to have a new experience of self and the world is identifying what are these sticky thoughts that I have. And so what makes a thought sticky? Because if you think about it, the human brain has an excessive amount of thoughts running through it every single day. And yet there are only a few that we latch onto, that we cling to, that are sticky, that impact our sense of self in the world. Why is that? Well, the literature would tell us that what makes a thought sticky is the energetic charge of the emotion that is tied to that story. The energetic charge of the emotion that is tied to that story. So for each of us, our capacity, our willingness, our skillfulness to be with certain emotions is completely different, based on our lived experience, based on the way we have experienced certain emotions in the past, based on all sorts of things. But if we use an example of somebody who has not been supported in knowing how to be with grief, as an example, and has a really hard time holding the emotion, the experience, the sensation of grief within the body, which of course is valid, which of course is a common human experience, then what happens is their body and their mind stays very alert to anything that might be tied to a story of grief, or that might elicit that sensation, that emotion within the body. And they stay hyper vigilant. The mind and the body stays hyper vigilant, making sure that if there is something that has a residue, a texture, a fragrance of grief, I'm going to be aware of it. I'm going to know, because what the body has learned and what the mind has learned is that that hurts and I don't like that and that's dangerous to me. It's like as humans, we have learned fire is hot. If I touch fire, I'm going to be burned. So we have it inbuilt within us that when we see fire, we know our body and our brain, our mind has the awareness, don't touch that because it hurts and it will cause you harm. There are certain emotions that we feel to be just as dangerous, just as harmful as fire burning us. And so when a thought presents, that has an undercurrent, a sensation, a texture associated with that emotion, we cling to it, not because we want it necessarily, but because there is something within our internal processing system that says to us, be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful. And there we are, we're paying it a lot of attention. And if it's something that we've told ourselves many times over, if it's evidence for some self-fulfilling prophecy or for some anticipated anxiety that we have already been fearful of or conscious of, there we are, we're hooked into the thought. That thought is sticky and it remains, right? Now, for a lot of us, some of the thoughts that appear, right, are difficult to just dissolve. And we're working on that. We're bringing awareness. You're doing all of the things. But how can we also have the body come on board? How can we not just try and intellectualize our way through healing and actually have a holistic approach to our healing that includes the innate healing capacity of the body? Because it is in our body that all of our emotions are registered, right? We feel desire in the body. We feel worry, maybe about our kids or our partner, our community, in the body. When we're anxiously awaiting news, we feel that in the body. When we adore our pets, we feel that in the body. All of our experiences like this are visceral. We have an experience within the body. Now, this is something that has been referred to in literature and something I'm presenting to you today, known as body awareness. And it's something that I don't think is spoken about enough. So here I be today bringing this forward to you. So what body awareness brings to light is that our body is responding, right? Our body is responding to everything that is occurring around us and also within us at all times. And we do know this. We already consciously have an awareness of this. You might be able to remember a time where your body was communicating something to you before you had even logically caught up to what was going on. Maybe your stomach clenched or your mouth went dry or your muscles felt tense. Okay. And these sorts of changes may last a few moments or for much longer. The body literally responds before, during, and after anything that we are experiencing. The body is constantly communicating with us. But because of our conditioning, of our upbringing, of our education, of our incessant desire to intellectualize everything as a way to learn and grow, we have lived so much of our lives within our heads, relating only to our thoughts, that we've missed the check engine signals that our body has been providing. So usually, what I mean by that, let me explain what I mean by that. There are signals that our body has been giving us when something's not quite right, when something needs our attention, when something needs to change. Maybe it's a tension in the head or an ache in the neck or a sick feeling in the stomach or a fatigue or an inability to sleep. The body has been showing us check engine, check engine, check engine. Something's not right, something's not right. And what do? We have more coffee or we distract ourselves in other ways. We repress and deny the signals that the body has been giving us until the car breaks down, until the car flips, until something happens that we cannot deny, or until we have a crisis within ourselves and our minds and we think like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? But really, when we stop and we think about it, our body had been giving us all of these signals, check engine, check engine, check engine, that something wasn't right within us for a really long time. We are experiencing ourselves in a physical body, and that body responds to everything. Are we only our bodies? No. And in my work, I speak deeply and often about our inner nature, the true nature of who we are, and I share how my devotion to the spiritual path has opened up deeper levels of understanding and awareness of consciousness within myself and how that has helped me on my own path of healing. It's a different conversation for a different day. But irregardless of all of that, in this life, in this human experience, we are still experiencing ourselves within a human body, and that body responds to everything. And luckily for us, our body does so much of its job independently of you. We don't have to consciously turn our bodies on every day, right? We don't have to say, okay, body, do your thing. Our body just provides and takes care of us in the best way that it can, moment to moment to moment to moment. And we take that for granted in a lot of ways. But our body actually does need our support too, in order for our well-being and our vitality and our health and the provision of our experience within our body, however that looks, however uniquely that presents through us to us as us, is our body does need our support. We can't just take for granted that it will just do its thing. So here are some ways that we can support our body. We can begin by simply just noticing what your body is experiencing right now. And as I say this, I realize I'm ignoring a tickling in my throat. I've been doing a lot of private coaching recently, a lot of workshops. My throat needs some attention, which is perfect timing for this slide. Because I was going to ask you to notice what your body is experiencing right now, because it's very likely that unless you had made a really conscious decision before tuning in and connecting with me here to set yourself up comfortably before you started watching this, that your body right now is actually in a slightly uncomfortable position or posture. And that's not your fault. Our bodies aren't designed to sit for this long at all, right? We're designed to move. But the question remains, were you even aware of the discomfort? Were you tuned in to what your body has wanted you to become aware of and realize? Or not? Or not? Were you so focused? Were you so captivated? Were you so engaged in what you were listening to? And so practiced and skilled at ignoring the cues, the signs, the signals, the feedback of the body that you hadn't even thought to contemplate. What's my body experiencing right now? How does it feel within my body right now? Is this comfortable or uncomfortable? Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral? What's going on? Maybe we have no awareness of that because we have not ever been prompted to consider that for ourselves. So here's the starting point. Tuning into your own body often as you move through the day. Not to judge it, not to make it better, just to at least bring the warmth of your awareness to your internal landscape. What does it feel like to be me within this body right now? Not, do I like the way that I look, or do I like the way that I'm presenting? Do I like the way that I've produced? Do I like the way that I'm... It's not about that. It's not about outcome and indicator. It's not about what has my body been able to provide for me today or do for me today. It's moment to moment checking in with what sensations am I aware of? What's going on within my internal landscape? And why we want to do this, why we want to be tuning in to our own bodies and asking, what does my inner wisdom want me to know, is that it supports us in not being blindsided by our own reactions, right? If we're spending time tuning in to what's going on within us throughout the day, we might notice a twitch in our temples, or a clench of our fists, or maybe a tapping of our foot, or we're tapping our pen, or we're doing something. Maybe it's a flutter in your tummy or a heat in your loins, because not all feelings are unpleasant, right? Let's not assume that every time we check in with ourselves, our body has something negative to feed back to us. That's definitely not the case, right? But regardless of what we find, the point is that these sensations support us in revealing how we really feel behind our conditioned exterior. If you're like me, then you have a strong awareness that, oh, wow, my identity, my personality, how I present in the world has been molded and shaped to be polite, to appear professional in certain settings. There's a lot of people-pleasing tendencies that I'm working to kind of resolve within myself. So how I'm presenting and how I appear in the world is not always the truth of my experience. There's a separation that has occurred between what's going on within me and how I present to the world. And because of that, sometimes I don't even know how I feel until it's too late, until I'm reactive, right? Some of us are in complete denial about our bodily states, or we're so disconnected from our emotions because we've become, as I said earlier, really good at developing some pretty productive distractions or adaptive responses or coping mechanisms. And the reason we want to check in with our bodies throughout the day is so that we don't find ourselves having these like aggressive, angry outbursts that seem to come out of nowhere, or that we don't find ourselves slipping into these disassociated, disconnected states where we've just lost all motivation, or that we're not projecting something onto other people because we haven't allowed ourselves to process it within us. We want to do the best that we can do, as I said, to move through the world without causing harm to ourselves and others. And to do that, we need to be consciously checking in with ourselves. How am I doing? How am I feeling? What do I need? Not to judge, not to shame, not to deny, It's actually the opposite. To nurture, to soothe, to love when needed. To offer practical support like the sip of water that I needed before. To know, oh, I'm tired. I'm tired. Or, oh, I'm really agitated. Or I'm really anxious. So because I have an awareness that there's this tightness in my chest and my tummy feels really strange, well, I'm realizing how anxious and uptight I am right now. You know what? I'm not actually going to get into a conversation with this person about this thing now, because I know anything that I say, everything that I think, my entire experience is coming through me, through this filter, through this lens, through this microphone of the anxiety that's present within my body. So now's probably not the right time for me to try and best communicate, because I know that I can be a little bit snappy, aggressive when I'm anxious. That's the kind of awareness that we allow ourselves to bring to our experience in real time when we're tuned into the body, so that we can avoid unnecessary conflict, so that we can support ourselves in offering ourselves what we need, so that we can remain tapped in, tuned in, connected when we're in conversation with ourselves or the world. This is how we begin to feel better about ourselves. This is the foundation of self-confidence and self-worth and self-respect, because we like who we are, because we nurture the truth of who we are, and we allow ourselves to experience all the emotions that are within us, that are always going to be within us. But because we are tuned in, tapped into what we are experiencing and what the sensations and emotions reveal, we then get to make choices about what we're doing moment to moment based on what is going on within us. So here's 2 reflection prompts for you today. The first is, how aware of your body would you say you are? Right? Some of us don't even know, oh my goodness, I actually do need the support of someone helping me to learn, like, how do I get back into my body? You're saying all these things. I don't even know what you mean. I've never considered what an internal landscape is, right? How aware of your body would you say you are? A, very shut down and disconnected from your body. B, sometimes aware, but not always. Or C, very in touch with sensation, movement, and I feel at home within my body almost all of the time. There's no right or wrong here. This is a prompt for you to just sit back and consider and reflect upon. The second prompt today, do you respond and do something when your body communicates something to you? Do you stop and rest when you're fatigued? Do you move around and stretch if you're stiff? Do you give energy, pent up energy, an outlet when you feel wound up? Or do you normally override your body and continue whatever you had planned to do? All right. I have 2 things to share with you as a very gentle introduction to what somatic experiencing or practices might look like, sound like, feel like. So the first is shaking. And I have a PDF that I will share with you that goes into this in a little more detail if you're interested, and just gives a little more background information for why this is a legitimate thing, because it's about to look and sound strange. And for many people, if they've never done this before, they feel quite silly. And so I want you to know that this goes beyond just me thinking it's a good idea, or, you know, the somatic movement thinking it's a good idea, that there is science behind this that backs this as a legitimate way to support our bodies. So Dr. Peter Levine developed somatic experiencing as a body-based therapy to process and release trauma. And in his book, Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma, he described the way that animals can be observed shaking to release tension and stress. So we see, like, when animals have been frightened or startled, or maybe they've got into, you know, a fight with another animal, as they move away from that experience, they do that shake, right? And we see, like, oh, they're shaking that experience off. And this is pretty much what we're inviting ourselves to do as well. So a shaking practice is literally what it sounds like. I often provide some music as a support for people to use. So we might put on a track and we just move our bodies. We just shake our bodies, literally shaking every single part of us, not in a way that's choreographed or preconsidered, but literally just allowing the body, and I'll demonstrate in a moment, to shake itself. And here's where we suspend the need for it to logically make sense or look a certain way or have a certain outcome. And we just know that this is something that the body requires. The shaking or the vibrating helps to release muscular tension, burn excess adrenaline, and calm the nervous system to its neutral state to offer us a practical way to support ourselves in managing stress levels in the body. We need this every day. This is a daily practice that I share with the women that I work with. This is a daily practice that I take on for myself. It's something that I definitely share with my 4-year-old son. And we don't wait for something obvious to have happened before we offer this up to ourselves. We just know that as human beings moving through a very loud, busy world, that we come face to face with things that make us tense up. You only need to listen to the news and you know that your nervous system is having to process and deal with all sorts of things that are causing anxiety, stress, worry, sadness, overwhelm within the body that we are so used to, that we've normalized in such a way that we don't even realize the impact that it's having on a body that holds on to the energy of these emotions, right? It could be that you're driving in your car and you go to change lanes and it's a near miss and your body has that experience of, startled, scared, shocked for a moment, but because you're okay, because you have places to go, we just continue and we think, I'm fine, it's fine. But actually the body is not fine. The body is not fine. I have many examples of ways that women have told me stories of the ways that they've overreacted to something and realized when we kind of rewind the tape that something had occurred that day or earlier in the week that had them feeling a kind of way, shook, wound up, anxious. They'd moved on. The situation ended and they thought, well, that's finished now and I'm fine, let's continue. And then they overreacted to something and thought like, why am I acting so crazy, for lack of a better word? Why am I having such a big reaction that doesn't really make sense? In the context of what's occurring, I'm having a reaction that doesn't really match what's occurring. And we realize, wow, it's because my body was still holding on to the tension of the anxiety, the fear, the worry, whatever it was. So shaking gives us this beautiful way to let the body just do its thing, right? Not so that we won't ever feel anxious or worried or scared or whatever. It's that we have greater capacity to hold the new stimulation that is inevitably going to come in because we're people living in the world. So shaking quite literally will look like you can do it seated, you can do it standing. Like I said, I encourage it with music because it supports us, it guides us. Music is a medicine within itself. But you might literally just start by just shaking out your wrists and then moving into your elbows and your arms and just shaking your entire body, your head, doing my legs. That's it. Like anybody who is able-bodied is able to do that, right? And we shake and I jump and I let my body kind of bend backwards and forwards and really get into just having that release. And it looks ridiculous. I won't deny that, but what I will tell you is that it feels great afterwards. You just have this moment of like, okay. And here I am. And what I will tell you, if you give yourself over to shaking, what I notice more than anything else is that my mind has a really hard time fixating on any thought in particular. Initially, what we're thinking is, this is ridiculous and I feel kind of stupid. And if we can just hold ourselves in the practice and ask of ourselves to ascend beyond that, to be like, yes, this is weird. Yes, this is strange. When we just give ourselves over to it, what we find is that little bit of spaciousness within us where the body is just doing its thing and the mind has been let off the hook for a little while. That's not the aim and intention of shaking. It's a beautiful byproduct. And we come back into the moment afterwards and the body just does feel a little more settled. We know this to be true. We get kids to go and burn off energy, right? If you have a dog, you might know that we like to take it for a walk because they know that they can be more relaxed, more at ease once they've burnt off some of that energy within their bodies. We are exactly the same. Such a simple thing that we can do anytime, anywhere to best support ourselves. The next thing that I want to share with you is something called a body scan meditation. This is an example of a mindfulness-based body scan technique. So when I say meditation, it basically means that we're focusing our mind on this and this alone. It's giving us a place of focus with a devoted, concentrated intention. So in a body scan meditation, the body parts that we focus on become the objects of meditation. It's where we keep bringing our awareness, our focus, our energy to again and again and again. And if you've done any type of meditation before, or maybe you've just tried to meditate before, the first thing you will notice is it's really hard. It's really challenging to stay focused, and that's okay. So many people have felt like that they can't meditate, or they've failed meditating, or they've missed the point entirely because their mind is still actively looping and ruminating and projecting and going into the past and doing all the things, and that's fine. That is the state of most human minds, and the point of meditation is just to train ourselves in really focusing our awareness, our attention, beg your pardon, on one thing at one time, right? And so in a body scan meditation, and I'm going to offer a little snippet, a little glimpse of what that might look like, feel like, sound like, we notice if our mind is running away, and we simply just come back to wherever we are being guided to concentrate. So we've got a little bit of time. I've managed to get through this quite quickly today. So I'd love to offer up a guided body scan meditation for you now. Maybe 2 minutes, won't take long. Why not, right? Why not? So I'll get you. You can be seated, standing, lying, wherever I find you, not driving. If you're listening to this as you're driving, just listen in, but please don't do this. I'm going to invite you to just lower your gaze, or gaze gently at a fixed object in the room. Or if it would feel good and it would feel safe for you, you might like to close your eyes entirely. And just take a breath. And what I'm going to ask you to do now is bring all of your attention and your awareness to the very top of your head. Very top of your head. As if you're looking at it from a bird's eye view. And just see what sensation you notice, if any. And then bring your awareness down to your face. And I want you to feel if there is any tension being held in your face. Maybe your jaw could relax a little. Maybe even with your eyes closed, they could even just soften a little. Maybe you're holding them a little tight. Relax the face. I'm going to take an inhale here. And as we exhale, see if we can soften the face and then soften the shoulders too. Let ourselves just dissolve a little of the tension we didn't even realize that we were holding. And now I want you to just scan your entire internal landscape and see if you can come across just a vivid sensation anywhere in your body, something that you notice. Could be a tightening in your neck. If you've just eaten, it could be your stomach digesting food. Could be that your hands are cold. Any vivid sensation that you notice. Itch in your nose. Find something and place all of your attention and your awareness there. If your mind drifts off thinking about what am I going to have for lunch, What time is it? Bring your mind back. That's okay. Every thought you notice, just notice and come back to that point of awareness, wherever you were fixing your attention. I invite you to sweep your internal landscape again and see what else you notice. If there's another sensation that's available, there always is. Be a heat or a humming or an itch. If you're struggling, just bring your awareness to your breath. There's subtleties in the sensations that we notice. There's a whole mysterious inner world for us to experience and to explore. This body scan meditation supports us in two ways. It allows us to tune out the background noise of the world around us and to experience the internal landscape within us so that we might notice what the body has been longing for us to pay attention to. And this also helps us to focus our mind, to slow down, to bring our attention to one thing at one time. And I like this because our body is always available to us, waiting for us to activate something like a body scan meditation. All right. For lack of time, now I'll get you to blink your eyes open. It's just a little quick segment, a little window into what a body scan meditation can look like, feel like, sound like. And if you've not experienced something like that before, you might think, well, what was the point of that? The point is the stillness. The point is the awareness. The point is the connection with the body. That is the point. That is the point. All right. That brings us to a close today. Thank you so very much for tuning in and connecting with me. There is so much that I could share and say, but I wanted this to be a really gentle starting point just for you to consider and contemplate the relationship that you currently have with your body, with your internal experience, with the way that you are allowing your body to innately heal itself and process emotions and be a co-creator of your experience of self and the world with you, through you, to you, as you. If you have any questions, and I'm sure you do, if you have any insights, any reflections, I would love you to connect with me. I'm best reached on Instagram at the moment. That's my handle, at Lena_Moxon. And there's a variety of ways. I have capacity for one-on-one mentorship at the moment. I have some live events happening where I live in Geelong. I have some online group programs that are due to get started again soon. There's always a lot happening in my world. And so I invite you, if nothing else, just to stay connected with me on Instagram, and we can just be in conversation around ways that we can heal ourselves through healing our bodies, through developing a stronger, more loving, more connected relationship with the incredible, wild, wise creature that is our body. All right, my loves. Thank you. Thank you.